I'm sorry it's taken me so long to reach out to you. I wasn't ready to say anything before. But I'm ready now.
At 57, I, Celine Dion, finally open up about Renee Angelil. I sang to the entire world with a bleeding heart. I stood before millions, won dozens of awards, sold over 200 million albums. They called me the Golden Voice of Canada. But behind the soaring high notes that touched the sky were the plunges straight into hell. That was my final whisper, Celine Dion. A voice that made Titanic immortal, that made the world cry with My Heart Will Go On, and yet a soul that has endured too many invisible stabs. I don't scream. I don't write books to expose others. I only carry within me a list. The list of 5 singers I despise the most. Who stands at the very top? And why did they turn love, music, and even my honor into a nightmare? Listen until the end, because this story is not just about rage. It is an indictment, told through music, through blood, through tears, and through my very soul. I was never tough. I was never beautiful. I was never cool. And school. I was never good at that either. The truth is heavy now, too heavy to carry in silence. From musical angel, they once called me, I became the woman scarred by invisible blades. I was born in 1968, in Charlemagne, a tiny town in Canada. The youngest of 14 children in a poor family. My childhood was a choir of voices in a crowded kitchen, an old piano that never rested, and long nights staring at the ceiling, dreaming that one day my voice would escape the shadows and reach the world. That dream, impossibly, came true. Then came Renee Angelil, the man who bet his own house on my voice. He was my manager, my mentor, my husband, my shield. For 30 years, he stood beside me. With him, I rose from the little girl with nothing to a woman the world called an icon. I sang at the Oscars, at the Olympics. I collected Grammys and more awards than I could count. I sold over 200 million albums. They named me the Golden Voice of Canada. But every spotlight casts a shadow, and mine was long, dark, merciless. They used to say I was nothing more than Whitney Houston's echo. Tabloids screamed, Celine is just a glorified karaoke singer. Others laughed, without Titanic, she's nothing. Zero. I heard it all. I swallowed every insult, every tear. And then I walked on stage, with a smile painted over my scars, and sang as if my soul was breaking into pieces. I loved once. I was protected once. And then I lost it all. In 2016, Renee, my anchor, my love, died of cancer. 2 days later, my brother followed him. I collapsed. I didn't think I could stand again. And when illness came for me too, a rare disease that twisted my muscles, shook my voice, stole the very thing that defined me, the world whispered, she's over. She belongs to the past. But here I am, still standing, still whispering my truth. I collapsed once, on the floor, my body shaking in the grip of a seizure. And in that silence between breaths, I heard it, a whisper cutting through the dark, Celine Dion is finished. People think I'm strong. I'm not. I've only learned how to smile for the cameras and then break down alone, hidden from the world. I lost my husband. I lost my health. And I lost the very wings that once carried me above it all. Through it all, I endured the knives of betrayal. Words sharper than blades, thrown at me by colleagues, even by singers I once admired. They laughed. They mocked. They turned me into a punchline just to raise themselves higher. 4 years, I chose silence. I let my music answer for me. But music, no matter how powerful, could never fully speak my pain. And so, here I am, at 57, finally ready to speak. Ready to reveal the list. 5 names, 5 voices, 5 scars carved into my soul. These were people who once toasted with me, embraced me, promised loyalty, and left me with wounds that never closed. Who was the first to sneer at me, "You've got the body, but no soul in your voice"? And why is the last name on this list someone who swore they'd stand by me for life? This is not just a story. This is the beginning of my reckoning. The first name, Mariah Carey, the Billboard Diva Showdown. I know you're shocked. I can almost hear your gasp. But yes, the very first name on my list of those I despise most is hers. By the late 90s, the music world was obsessed with just two voices, Celine Dion and Mariah Carey. We both climbed the highest notes, sold millions of albums, topped the charts. On the surface, rivals. Beneath it, a storm the world never saw. We could have shined together. Two women, two voices, lifting each other higher. But Mariah didn't want that. She turned it into a war, a fight for survival where only one of us could stand. I remember it vividly. 1998. My Heart Will Go On was everywhere, living at the top of the Billboard charts week after week. And just when the world seemed to sing my song, Mariah released My All. It wasn't just competition. She wanted to bury me. I'll never forget her smirk in that interview. When asked about Titanic's success, she said, "People only bought the record because of the movie, not because of Celine. She just got lucky." The words spread like fire, printed on every headline, whispered by every critic. And when My All hit #1, her fans screamed it louder, "Mariah is the real diva. Celine only survives because of Titanic." At the American Music Awards, when my name was called, I didn't hear applause. I heard boos, whistles, a wall of rejection from her fans crashing over me. I smiled as I held the trophy, but inside it was as if 1,000 stones were hurled at my chest. And it didn't stop. In 1999, I was promised a major European tour slot. I was ready. My team was ready. But at the last moment, the words came, "Sorry, Celine. Mariah sells more tickets." And just like that, everything I had built, every note I had sung to prove myself, was eclipsed in a single night. Fame is a battlefield. And Mariah, instead of seeing me as a sister in music, saw me as an enemy to erase. I don't hate her voice. How could I? What I hate is the way she needed me gone. And if you thought rivalries over Billboard charts and stolen spotlights were cruel, then you haven't heard the second story. Because this one wasn't just about fame. It was about love, a love that slowly turned into a cage, tightening around my heart until I couldn't breathe. The second name, Peabo Bryson. My duet partner. The man who walked away when I fell. I once believed Beauty and the Beast wasn't just a song. I thought it was fate. When we stepped on stage in 1992, the lights rose, the orchestra swelled, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop breathing. Our voices wove together like two souls finding each other in the middle of chaos. And in the silence after the applause, I told myself it was real. Backstage, we held hands. In hotel rooms, we whispered vows that sounded like forever. He told me, "I'll be by your side always, Celine." Not just on stage, but in life. And after Renee, I let myself believe him. I thought maybe this was the one man who truly saw me, who loved me. But the truth has a cruel way of showing its face. March 1994. A music industry afterparty at the Waldorf Astoria in New York. The whole world of American showbiz was there, glittering, buzzing, celebrating. I walked in, glass of wine in hand, still glowing from my performance earlier that night. And then, I froze. Right in the center of the room, Peabo was locked in a kiss. Not with me. With Regina Belle, the woman who had just performed a whole new world by his side. The music blared, laughter filled the air, and I stood there, invisible. A ghost at my own story. I tried to steady myself, to swallow the pain, but the tears betrayed me. I turned to leave. He saw me. He didn't follow. He didn't explain. Instead, he raised his glass, smirked, and said loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Don't be surprised. Celine always thinks she's a princess. But in real life, she's nothing but a fame-hungry fool." The laughter erupted like knives. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, some pitying, most mocking. I burned under their gaze. And in that instant, I broke. The wine glass in my hand became a weapon. I threw it across the room, straight into his face. The music died. The room fell silent. The red wine ran down the face I once thought I loved. Regina Belle stood frozen, her lips parted in shock, and then, the cameras exploded. Flashes everywhere. Within minutes, the image spread like wildfire. By dawn, the headline screamed across every paper. Celine Dion drenches Peabo Bryson in wine. Disney fairy tale ends in disgrace. Fans laughed. The tabloids feasted. And yet, no one could have predicted what followed. Peabo's career began to unravel. From Grammy-winning star to fading name on the charts, his reputation, once polished like gold, was forever stained with the memory of that wine-soaked night. A month later, I couldn't bear the silence anymore. I decided to face him. Atlanta. A dimly lit bar where once, not long ago, we had sketched song lyrics together like two dreamers. I sat across from him, my voice trembling as I asked, "Do you regret it?" His eyes were cold, his words like a blade. "Regret? No. You were just a small chapter in my life. And that chapter is closed. Don't ever say my name again." I walked out, tears blurring the world around me. Peabo Bryson, the man who once sang with me about the most beautiful love in the world, left me branded a public joke. My answer had been a single glass of wine, thrown in fury, etched into memory, impossible to erase. A scar I would carry forever. And if a man could be that cruel, what came next was worse. Because the third name wasn't a man at all. It was a woman. A singer who not only stole the spotlight but mocked me, openly, mercilessly, in front of thousands. The third name, Whitney Houston. The voice of God. The slap on stage. I had survived Mariah, the Billboard war. I had endured Peabo, the betrayal of love. But the third cut came from the woman the world worshipped as the Queen of Soul. I have never denied Whitney's gift. When she sang "I Will Always Love You," it was as though time itself held its breath. Her voice could stop the world, and even I sat in silence, tears on my cheeks. But what few know, what the world never saw, is that between us lay a battlefield. And on that battlefield, I bled. This wasn't just about music. It was about pride, the spotlight, and a song that was stolen from me. Hollywood was on the hunt for the voice to deliver the theme for a major romantic blockbuster. The demo landed in my hands. I recorded a test version, and when the director listened, his eyes welled with tears. "Celine, you're our choice. This voice will make the film unforgettable." In that moment, I believed destiny had spoken. I saw myself already on the Oscar stage, just like with Beauty and the Beast, clutching another golden statue. I let myself dream. But weeks later, the call came. Cold. Final. "Sorry, Celine. The song has been given to Whitney Houston." I was stunned. I asked why. They dodged. Then a songwriter friend leaned close and whispered, "Don't ask, Celine. In Hollywood, a voice is only half the story. Whitney has other ways of convincing directors." I didn't need details. I understood. In this town, talent can lose to power, seduction, or closed-door deals. And this time I lost. Whitney recorded the song. It soared across the globe, a triumph I had once held in my hands. I swallowed the bitterness as critics and fans whispered, "Whitney has soul. Celine is just technical. Whitney is the real diva." Each word was a dagger. If losing the song was a silent stab, the next wound came under blinding lights. New York. A massive charity concert, the stage packed with legends. Whitney and I were paired for a duet, the greatest love of all. The world was waiting to hear our voices unite. Backstage, I still held on to hope. Maybe this was the moment we'd bridge the distance. Maybe music could remind us there was space for sisterhood. But when the music began, that hope died. The plan was clear. We were to share the climax. I waited for my cue, mic in hand. Whitney gripped hers tighter, stretching every note, pushing higher, drowning out even the orchestra. I tried to join, but she surged ahead, flooding the room, swallowing the spotlight whole. The crowd roared. A standing ovation. They cheered her as if I wasn't even there. I stood beside her, forcing a smile, my hands trembling, my heart sinking. And then, she turned, took my hand, smiled, and whispered, just loud enough for me alone, "Sorry, baby. They only need one diva." That whisper was a slap, sharper than any hand, delivered in front of thousands. The next morning, the headlines screamed, "Whitney Houston devours Celine Dion on stage." That was the headline splashed everywhere. The press reveled in it, the world divided. Some asked, Titanic's golden voice, or just a soulless shadow? Critics spoke in unison. Whitney had soul, Celine only had technique. Whitney's fans laughed at me, mocking me as the Canadian robot. My own fans wept, sending letters of comfort, "Celine, we hear your heart." But no letter could erase the truth. The wound had already cut too deep. A few months later, I met Whitney again in a Los Angeles recording studio. No lights, no audience, just the two of us sitting face to face in a heavy silence. I gathered all my courage and asked, "Why? Why did you turn me into a joke before the world?" Whitney calmly lit a cigarette, took a drag, exhaled a cloud of smoke, and said coldly, "Celine, this isn't church. This is war. You have a voice, but you'll never have soul. And the audience, they'll always choose me over you." I trembled. That wasn't just an answer, it was a fatal blow. That night, back in my hotel room, I opened my notebook with shaking hands and wrote, "I once believed music was the language of love. But tonight, I learned it can also be a weapon, a blade sharp enough to kill the soul of an artist." Whitney had it all, the voice, the soul, the power. I had only a heart, and that heart had been torn apart. The third cut did not come in a bedroom or in the shadows of a hallway. It came under the brightest lights, in front of millions. A humiliation I will carry for life. And then came the fourth name, Frank Sinatra, the king of love songs, the man who could turn tenderness into manipulation. Since I was a little girl in Charlemagne, Canada, I had listened to Frank through my family's old radio. My way echoed through freezing winters, carrying my dream that one day I too would sing with all my heart, the way he did. But I never imagined that meeting him would turn that dream into another wound. Frank Sinatra wasn't just a singer, he was an institution, a living monument. For me, he was the very first lesson in music. And in 1995, the dream I carried since childhood came true. I was invited to a charity gala in Las Vegas, and Frank himself would be there. I can still see that ballroom in my mind. Glittering chandeliers, marble floors polished to gold, the orchestra breathing life into timeless melodies. Frank was old by then, but his presence still commanded silence. When he shook my hand, his blue eyes still burned with fire. He leaned in and whispered, "Celine, you're the only one who can carry on my ballad legacy." My heart trembled. That single sentence felt like a blessing from a god. When the organizers suggested we record a duet for the fundraiser, I thought destiny had finally placed me where I belonged. 2 days later, I went to meet Frank in his suite at the Wynn Hotel. I dressed modestly, carrying my sheet music close to my chest, filled with anticipation. This could be a legendary duet, I thought. The room was thick with cigar smoke and the sharp scent of whiskey. Frank lounged in his chair, filling 2 crystal glasses. I carefully laid the music sheets on the table and started talking about harmonies, phrasing, the arrangement. But he didn't answer. He just stared at me, his eyes soft, yet heavy with something darker. Then he placed his glass down and spoke slowly. "You want this song, don't you, Celine? You want to stand beside me and show the world what 2 generations can do together." My heart pounded as I nodded. He chuckled, leaned closer and whispered, "Then you know what it costs to keep the spotlight, right?" At first, I thought I had misheard. But when he raised his glass again, never looking away, I understood. This wasn't a metaphor. It was a proposition, crude, shameless. My body went cold. Goosebumps ran across my skin. The man I had idolized, the man who sang Strangers in the Night and made the world swoon, had turned me into a bargaining chip. My voice broke. I came here for music, not this. Frank shrugged, exhaled smoke, and replied without blinking, "Music is just a small part of the game, sweetheart." I grabbed my sheet music and stood. My hands shook as I left the room, and the moment the door closed behind me, the tears fell. The very next day, I was told the duet had been handed to another singer. No explanation, no apology. A week later, the tabloids erupted. Celine Dion loses Sinatra duet due to her diva attitude. They painted me as the problem. Too difficult, too demanding, unable to collaborate. I clenched my teeth and said nothing, because I knew the truth would never be believed. Who would dare accuse Frank Sinatra, America's untouchable legend, of such a thing? Months later, at an event in Los Angeles, I crossed paths with him again. I swallowed my pride, hoping for clarity, some sign that it had all been a misunderstanding. Frank looked at me with eyes cold as steel and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "You had your chance, Celine. You turned it down. Don't ever dream of standing beside me again." That wasn't seduction. It was a threat. A calculated show of power meant to bury me. And if Frank could twist love songs into weapons, the final name on my list was even more merciless. Because this time, it wasn't an idol or a man with power. It was someone I once called a friend, a soulmate. And that betrayal became the deepest cut of all. The fifth name, Barbra Streisand. The sister. The woman who delivered the final blow. Peebo was the love that turned into betrayal. Whitney was the rival who stole not just the spotlight but a song. Frank, the legend I once worshipped, revealed himself as a predator. But the deepest, most devastating wound came from a woman I once called a sister, a soulmate, Barbra Streisand. In 1997, we recorded Tell Him, an unforgettable duet. The first time I heard Barbra sing beside me, I cried. Her voice was deep, rich, powerful. Mine was bright, soaring, free. Together we blended like two souls finally finding each other. In a Los Angeles studio, Barbra placed her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Celine, you're the little sister I never had. Music connects us." I believed her. After all the knives in my back, I thought I had finally found an ally. February 1998, at a gala in Beverly Hills, we were asked to perform a few lines of Tell Him. I walked on stage smiling, greeted by thunderous applause. But when the music began, Barbra sang straight through the climax, the part that had always been mine. I was left with faint background harmonies. When the song ended, she turned, embraced me, radiant, while the audience cheered, never noticing what had happened. But I noticed. Something had changed. Backstage, I asked gently, "Barbra, why did you take the whole climax? We had an agreement." She looked at me cold and said flatly, "Celine, you need to understand. There's only one Barbra Streisand in this world. You've got the voice, but not the depth. Your technique. I'm soul. Don't ever think you're on my level." I was shattered. The woman I saw as a sister became the one holding the knife. The next day, headlines screamed, "Barbra Streisand overshadows Celine Dion at gala." One critic wrote, "Celine may soar, but Barbra has roots. And the audience will always choose depth." My fans wept for me, but hers laughed, calling me Barbra's backup singer. Months later, we crossed paths again at a party in New York. I approached her, still hoping for peace. "Barbra, I've always respected you. But why did you have to make me look like a joke?" She raised her champagne glass, looked me up and down, and said bluntly, "Because you needed a reminder, Celine. There's no room for two divas in show business." I heard the laughter. "Only one gets to wear the crown, and it's not you." The room erupted, and I stood frozen. I left the party with tears streaming down my face. That night, I wept and realized I had been betrayed by lovers, by mentors, by rivals, but I never imagined the knife would come from someone I once called a sister. Barbara, the woman who once called me her little sister, had turned me into a public joke. That wound didn't just pierce my heart, it shattered my last belief that friendship could survive in Hollywood. That was the final cut. 5 names, 5 wounds: Mariah, Peebo, Whitney, Frank, Barbara, each in their own way, each leaving a scar that never healed. And there are nights I lie in the dark asking myself, why am I still here? I lost my husband Rene, the man who was my rock. 2 days later, I lost my brother. Then I lost my voice to a cruel disease that stiffened my muscles, made my hands tremble, and stole the perfection from my high notes. The media called me a relic of a golden era. They wrote, Celine Dion, from golden voice to trembling ghost. I read those words, and I swallowed my tears. But then I look to the side, and I see my 3 children, their eyes bright, trusting. And I know I cannot fall. I remember my first performance in America back in 1990. The cheers, the flowers, the letters from fans who wrote, Celine, your voice saved me from depression. I remember the sold-out nights in Las Vegas, thousands singing with me, crying with me. But I also remember collapsing backstage, breathless, exhausted. I remember the mocking remarks, the condescending stares, the contracts that felt more like chains. I remember the hands that once lifted me up, only to let me fall halfway through. Every memory is a blade, but they are also proof that I have lived. In 2022, I went public with my diagnosis, stiff person syndrome. The world was shaken. I stood there trembling and told my fans, I love music, but my body is betraying me. I go through physical therapy every single day. That is my truth. 5 blades have cut through my life. But the applause, the letters, and the eyes of my children are what keep me standing. I scream in silence each time the seizures strike, reaching for a high note only to break when my voice shatters, yet I have never let go of the microphone. If I do, then they win, the ones who mocked me as a soulless robot, the ones who wished me gone, and I refuse to give them that victory. Renee is no longer here, but my 3 children are, Charles, and the twins, Nelson and Eddie. They hold me close and whisper, Mom, you don't need to sing anymore, you just need to live. I smile, stroke their hair, and answer softly, No, I must sing, because my voice is my soul, and that soul also belongs to you. They take me into the garden where the sunlight falls across their laughter, and in that moment I realize I have already won. Not on Billboard charts, not in recording studios, but here, in the arms of my family. Someone once asked if I had regrets, if my life might have been different had I never crossed paths with those who hurt me. I said yes. But without those wounds, I would not sing the way I do now. Pain has become strength, betrayal has become lyrics, and every note I sing carries both the blood of old scars and the wings that lift me higher. I have sung with a heart carved open by suffering, and perhaps that is why the audience hears my soul. If you are listening to me now, I want you to understand this. Never let anyone silence the music inside you. You may not be a singer, but every person carries a song, a dream, a fire, a soul. People will laugh, mock, and betray, but you cannot let them take away your voice. I have lost love, I have lost health, and I have lost dreams, yet I have never lost the song within my heart. And so I sit in a quiet garden in Las Vegas, the sun setting as my children run around me, their laughter echoing like music itself. I tremble as I hold my youngest, press a kiss into his hair, and smile. Not the smile of a diva on the red carpet or the forced smile under flashing cameras, but a true smile. The smile of a woman who has survived 5 knives, countless betrayals, and every storm. 5 names, 5 wounds, 1 lifetime, and 1 final smile. For my family, for my audience, and for myself. I am Celine Dion. I am still here, and I am still singing, with every scar of my soul.